There we go. Okay, it's coming.
Yeah.
It's more than we had before.
Should we
You're live.
We're live.
keep these lights the same or
I can dim these.
just a little bit? I think it's,
We are live now, Mr. Chairman.
that's better. Right. All the meeting order, and I'll ask everybody, starting with Scott, to
Scott Gardner, Wyoming County IDA.
Kevin Zanner, IDA Counsel.
Jim Rotowski, IDA.
Becky Ryan, IDA.
Mark at IDA.
Tom McCormick, IDA.
Joe Kemp, EFPR Group.
Jim Pierce, IDA staff.
Jennifer Tishka, IDA staff. Robin Marshallik, IDA staff.
Our first order of business is to review the minutes from last meeting, December 14th. I think we all have a copy. If you have a minute or two to look at it, we want to take a motion to approve the minutes, if there's no discussion. So moved. We have a second.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
And we have a financial report for December, and Robin, would you highlight that for us, please?
Okay, we started out the month with $30,880 in cash on hand and $2,220,166 invested funds. We brought in just a few dollars in interest earned, and we brought in our biannual management fees from the business center and the business assistance court. We had our typical monthly expenses. Nothing really stands out there. Total expenses $34,408. We ended up the month with $43,986 in cash on hand and $2,220,166 in invested funds. And on the backside, there's the budget. If you look through the budget, we haven't earned as many fees as we thought we would. We do have a couple things to put in yet that will be deferred, from this year, accrued from this year, I'm sorry. We just closed with the farm craft. We haven't put in the fees yet. Other than that, this is what we have for the year.
Any questions or discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the financial report as submitted.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Joe, I think you're next in order here.
Thanks, everyone. It's nice to be back. This is our second time through as auditors for the IDA. This is actually a kind of a combination presentation. Everything that I say really relates to both the IDA and the Business Assistance Corporation. And the document here reflects both of those. At the top of page 1, the scope of services, we will be doing audits of the financial statements of the entities, and they are done in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards and government auditing standards. So there will be a report in the front of the financials, in the front of the financial statements that will cover the auditor's report on the financial statements, and then behind the financial statements, there's a separate report on internal control of the financial reporting and on compliance and other matters. At the end of the engagement, there will be a management letter, commonly referred to as a SAS 115 letter, just if there's any comments or recommendations that we have with respect to accounting or controls or anything like that, they will be spelled out there. Prior to the conclusion of the audit, we basically sit down with the board and review the drafts of the financial statements so that the board has looked at them and reviewed them and approved them prior to going final. We will also be doing the tax forms for the Business Assistance Corporation. The engagement team is spelled out there. Chris Johnson is the engagement partner. I'm Joe Kemp. I'm actually a retired partner. And As I mentioned last year, when I retired, I continued to assist the firm, kind of doing what I like to do, which is basically things like IDAs, local development corporations, and smaller not-for-profits. So that's what we do. We'll actually utilize one of our staff people back in the office, so I will come out and do field work with their assistance, but they will be back in the office. Page 2 spells out management's responsibilities. Basically, management is responsible for developing and maintaining a system that allows for financial statements to be issued in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. So that includes establishing and maintaining internal control, ensuring compliance with laws and regulations, safeguarding assets, appropriate accounting policies, making information that we request available to us. If there are audit adjustments, and out here those are really rare, that those adjustments are then reflected in the books and records of the entities. And at the end of the engagement, we request a representation letter, which basically says that, you had provided us with all the information and we agree with the adjustments and such. As part of this engagement, management really identifies a person that is the overseer. And in this instance, you've got a management team that has been through the audit process many times, is very familiar with the financial statements, so that those skills, that knowledge and experience rest in the hands of management, and they basically oversee our work to ensure so that they are able to efficiently oversee the work that we do. They evaluate the adequacy of services and accept responsibility for the services. The engagement objective is to obtain reasonable assurance about whether the financial statements are in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, that they're free of material misstatements. It does not provide absolute assurance. The only way to provide absolute assurance is to do 100% testing of every transaction that the organizations have, which can't ever happen because nobody could ever afford an audit. So an audit really is a risk-based approach where we identify the key areas that we need to focus from an audit standpoint, and then there's a sampling of transactions to assure what we're thinking we see, we're actually seeing. We get a sufficient understanding of the organization, its internal control to plan the audit, so that we can, in essence, render an opinion on the financial statements. It is not an audit of internal control. There is no opinion on internal control provided. As a result of that, it's really designed to enable us to render an opinion on the financial statements. So we get an understanding of the controls. We outline the controls that are in place, and then we do some walkthroughs of those key controls so that we can basically see that what we're hearing the controls in place are, we're actually seeing that the controls in place are. We communicate our any significant issues that come up. We will provide an engagement letter, which has already been provided and signed, with all of the terms of the engagement. Develop an audit strategy, which involves inclusion of this board to talk about whether there's any hot button issues that you as an organization need us to focus on. At the end of the engagement, we communicate any deficiencies in internal control, be they significant deficiencies or material weaknesses, which would actually show up in the report on internal control or financial reporting and compliance and other matters or anything else. Work with management towards timely issuance of the financial statements. You have a March 31 filing deadline, New York State mandated, so we typically work backwards, see when that March board meeting is, because that would be the meeting where the statements would be reviewed and approved. And lastly, we're required to maintain our independence with respect to the organization. We as auditors, external auditors, have to assure the public as a whole that we are independent of our audited clients, just as a matter of practice. There's a whole page on planned audit scope. Really, I guess I can sum it up with an organization of this size. We go through, and again, we look at internal controls, we do walkthroughs of internal controls, but really, it's a question of going through the numbers and ensuring ourselves that, the numbers are supported. So we will look at the, things like the bank reconciliations, we will look at the certificates of deposit. We will actually send confirmations out for things on receivables, and ultimately looking at things like collectability of the notes, the loan portfolio in the Business Assistance Corporation. Typically, those are startup type organizations or things like that, that kind of financing. So looking at collectability is always an issue. From a risk assessment standpoint, revenue recognition is always an audit risk. Collectability of notes receivable, fraud risks always have to be considered, and we will actually do interviewing both of the staff internally, and we'll actually reach out to the chairman to have a conversation about fraud risks, and then internal control over financial reporting is always considered. The next page is just more planned scope on the audit. At the end of the day, we focus on the numbers, but then we also look at compliance with public authorities law to make sure that the IDA and entities are doing everything that they need to do to be in compliance with the public authorities. There is a timeline, overall timeline, which really kind of kicks off today with the meeting with management and the board to talk about planning. We will develop an audit strategy back in the office, go through our internal risk assessments. We've set up for the week of February 5th for field work. So in a couple of weeks, that's probably going to be a 3 or 4 day exercise. And then from there, we go back to the office and focus on financial statement prep. We need to know, again, what the board meeting date is, because we need to have a meeting to reflect both the financial statement drafts. And then finally, the ultimate goal is to release the financial statements by the end of March. And we were able to do it last year, with a little bit of time to spare. Last year was our first time through. First time through, by its very nature, tends to be an audit is always painful, but it's varying degrees of pain. Last year would have been.
I didn't, that's not a quote for me, by the way.
Just because it's new auditors getting up to speed, you understand what we are looking for as auditors. We were able to basically do what we needed to do in the time period that we had that we had set aside for it, and we met the deadline with a little room to spare, and that would be the goal again. Unlike a lot of firms who basically staff jobs with, I met a new client this morning, and last year their job was pretty much led by an intern and a senior accountant and an intern, and I said, we don't function that way. We've never functioned that way. Before I retired, I was the partner on Empire State Development. I spent the entire month of May in Manhattan, just because that's kind of the way we operate. We're a hands-on leadership firm, just because it makes a lot of sense for lots of different reasons, not the least of which, if something comes up that we need to have a discussion with, we can have that discussion real time. It doesn't have to wait for somebody to go back to the office and then, hear about something second or third hand. And I think what that does is just alleviates a lot of the possibility of misunderstanding. Auditors sometimes make judgments based on what they see, and sometimes their audit judgments are correct. And they
Jim will
need
tell you
to,
so.
and they need some understanding, and I've always found being in the field is the best way for that to happen. So, if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to.
It's interesting that how do you make determinations on the collectability on a lot of it?
Typically it's really more of an exercise. Like I say, I mentioned the big one, but I did a lot of LDCs with loan portfolios, and it's the organizations, getting them, lots of times they're startup, they're smaller type organizations, and just by definition, even though you've got lots of collateral, you need to look and see. And so what we do is, yes, there's a note, there's collateral, but we really look at the payment stream. We, and things like that to assure ourselves that, okay, that's a collectible.
Yeah, management also kind of tracks each of our loans, and we give a certain percentage on some loans where we think it might be uncollectible, so that gives them a place to start.
Yeah, and like I say, as Jim mentioned, there's a bad debt allowance that is recorded internally, and from our standpoint, we evaluate that to make sure that it's sufficient.
Anything further discussion? Thank you very much for coming.
I think, Mr. Chairman, maybe we'd even just call for an approval of the plan, just so we have that on the record. That's for the motion.
Do I have a motion to that effect? All in favor?
The part in the back that I didn't talk about is, GASB, but they're inevitable. We like to issue standards for the sake of issuing standards. There's really nothing that's new or out there. The big one that was effective last year was, the right to use asset and lease liability.
Yes.
But there's really not anything that's earth shattering.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Compensated absence, if we go out a couple of years, the risk disclosures, we go out a couple of years, that may be different, but, so.
Thank you for coming down, Joe.
Thank you,
Thanks,
appreciate
Joe.
it. Can I
Yes.
take?
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely, yep.
Those are all public records. I never hide anything from the auditors.
And it's got the
Thank you.
December's.
We'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, okay.
Take care, everyone. See you in March.
Bye, Joe.
Thank you.
Good seeing those.
Jim, I'll ask you to handle item 3.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Arcade and Attica Railroad, in their never-ending quest to make improvements to their rail line, in particular for their freight traffic for Rice-Source, has received another grant from New York State to the tune of $1.2 million. There's actually two things for the railroad we're going to talk about today. One being the IDA request for assistance, but they're also coming in and asked for a grant anticipation note as well that we'll discuss later. In regard to this, they have received a $1.2 million grant. One of the things that they are interested in doing is asking for the IDA to grant a sales tax exemption only for this project. Ironically, even though they get public funds, once they go out to buy the rail and the ties and everything is subject to sales tax. So out of the $1.2 million, about $1 million of that will be subject to the materials needed that are subject to sales tax. So we're estimating that sales tax savings to be in the neighborhood of $80,000. The company has completed an application that you see in your packet. They have also submitted to us a short form environmental assessment form, which is required for our IDA projects. And then council has provided a resolution following the EAF form. It's a little, I'm not going to read it because there's quite a few sections to it. Is there anything, Kevin, that you want to highlight on here that stands out?
No, I mean, this is our standard form of resolution that we use when we introduce projects. So, we've laid out here that the benefit being provided is a sales tax exemption benefit only. This is, we did the analysis under seeker. This is actually a type 2 action. So, because we're replacing, the company's replacing in-kind track. So that's not considered something that needs a further environmental review. So the agency is being asked to make a finding as to that as well. So, that's really it. It's a pretty simple project, no pilot involved or anything like that. This is part of documenting new projects.
So are some of the rail lines just out of condition and they just need replaced?
Most of the rail lines are of 70-pound capacity, which is fine, but now the freight cars are much heavier, and so they are replacing them with, I think, 150-pound weight.
And so the ownership of ANA is just
Private corporation,
private corporation and shareholders are.
board of directors.
Even there for, and Reisdorf, Dick, well, Christie's, Jim, they don't, they just stand to benefit from transportation of the, they don't have any vested interest. They might be on the board perhaps.
They are on the board, and historically, when the Arcade in Attica was short on some funds for replacing one of their engines, a loan was made by Reisdorf to pay for that.
Okay.
And so they do have a loan on record with the ANA that they are working on paying back.
Okay.
I guess so. Maybe, Mr. Chairman, we'll call for a vote, and then I'd just like to have just a brief discussion about the fee consideration on this, since it's a sales tax exemption only project.
You all have a copy of the resolution, which is referred to, as well as the supporting documents. I'll entertain a motion to approve the resolution as submitted. If there's no further discussion. So moved. Do I have a second?
Second that.
All in favor? Aye.
Normally, our fee is 1% of the cost of the materials that are subject to the sales tax. I didn't know if the board wanted to consider a lesser fee just based on the importance of the railroad, not only for the freight for one of our larger businesses, but also from the tourism perspective of the number of tourism people that come in and ride the rail as well. So, I'll leave that up to the board to decide, but either way, we're not talking about a significant amount, so.
It's traditional 1% on the 80,000.
Yeah.
I think it's important to support the tourism part of that.
Not only that, the conviction for the Bloomfield dairy farmers that benefit from that. There's lots of them here and there's going to be more.
Yeah.
Do I have a motion to take an exception as explained by Jim?
So, yeah.
All in favor? Aye. Okay.
I should mention to you also, now that you've passed the resolution, there is a cost benefit analysis in the packet as well.
We've already analyzed it.
Oh, you already did? Oh, you're way ahead of me. But as you can see, it returns greater than 2 to 1 back in benefits for the dollars that are invested through the exemption.
All right, you ready for it?
Yeah, just a couple quick things, because since we just met and then there was a lot of holiday stuff going on, but Jennifer and I had the opportunity to meet with an entrepreneur that from Strikersville who is heading up a new production company called Makers Movement. He's a very young, enterprising guy, just graduated from St. Bonaventure University, and he is discouraged by the young people he sees that don't know how to work with their hands.
Aren't we all?
And so he has decided, with the help of some former college professors, that he's going to begin manufacturing these kits that could be sold to either schools or some educational organizations or even homeschools, where the kits would be purchased and then there would be some curriculum associated with on how to put these things together and instructions on explaining what the tools are. And we're just not talking wood. Like over the weekend, I made a bunk bed for my granddaughter for Christmas, and that was just a set of plans. You cut out the pieces, you put it together. It's just stuff like that where he says that the kids don't know what the tools are or anything, but he's also putting together kits for like electronic types of things as well, for like cameras, for security systems and things like that. So it's really kind of a neat concept. He's a very impressive young man. He is going to be coming in, I think, hopefully in line with some of our other entrepreneurship programs we have. But he is also, I think, going to be looking at if we get the next grant for the micro enterprise, we'll be in line for that as well. But he's operating right out of a shop in Strikersville, making these kits, and it's just a very young, enterprising young man. I think that something like that we should be very supportive of. I also want to let the board know I met with the Department of Labor regarding the API closure. Department of Labor had their initial meeting with API. The plan is that they're going to severance most of those people till the end of April so they can continue to manufacture and build up inventory for their customer base. So there were a couple things that popped up as a result of that. One is that, I have been in contact by a company from North Carolina that's run by a guy who used to be an API employee, who now has a company very similar to API and would like to come in and take over some of the equipment and some of those jobs and try to keep those in place. So I've been playing kind of matchmaker with this gentleman and API, and we're trying to get to the right people. So we're trying to make a push to see if something like that could happen and he could stay right there in those buildings and keep the majority of jobs there. But we'll see where that goes and if API has an appetite for that. Otherwise, most of the equipment is going to China and the jobs will be dispersed if they don't want to go to API's plant in Wisconsin. It doesn't look like there's a bunch of other places they could go other than the two facilities in China. So I hate to see the workforce leave the area. My biggest concern.
Ignorant question. API, what do they do?
They make heat exchangers. One of the primary products that they were making as of late is like it's heat exchangers, fancy name for a radiator, and they were making heat exchangers for Bobcat for their skid steers, and so that's the type of thing that they make over there. All out of aluminum. They're cooling systems.
I'm not sure where they do.
Yeah.
And the guy from Carolina, is API is willing to speak with him, even though he's director?
Yeah, I mean, it's a similar product, not exactly competing head to head, and they're not the exact same product, but they can utilize the same equipment. That arcade facility, instead of having conventional natural gas fired ovens for baking the materials and stuff, they have electric over there. And, if they could, the cheap electric. So if they can like secure that, otherwise, if they don't move them, they're going to go out for auction and there's going to be penny on a dollar coming back. So I think there's something
else.
Something that's, yeah.
But they're not moving to China.
Well,
there's no financial advantage there.
not like there used to be.
No. If any place they'd go to Mexico, but why would they go there? Something else going on there, but that's pure speculation.
Yeah, understood. The other thing is the Farmcraft thing was mentioned earlier, how we close on that. And Jennifer, who drives by there every day because she lives on the road, said they're now starting on the second floor,
Yeah.
second story.
I
So
try to watch it whenever I can get out of the van.
I want to let the board know that JB Contracting, we approved that loan a long time ago, contingent upon him finding adequate space. He has notified me that he has found space in Perry and will be looking to move into the former Rich Plan building. I indicated before that happens, I want to see a copy of the lease, and I want to see a copy of the design plans on that building as well. So
Where's that located here?
right behind the town hall.
Yeah. Along the creek
Used to be
there.
a dairy, used to be a
The rich plan, it was the rich plan freezer.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like the predecessor to like the Schwann's man.
Yeah.
That comes around, delivers your fruit.
Does Nick Kitsa still own it?
He does. There's still working with that business that prospect that wants to buy the small machine shop over in Arcade. And then one of the guys that went through our business accelerator program, a little business in Arcade called Lawrence's Auto Detailing. Interesting guy. He's a wounded vet. He has this auto detailing business. He's very passionate about what he does. He does really high-end detailing stuff for people like Buffalo Bill players and Sabre players and things like that. He's been working out of a little rented garage, and through some of the programming and stuff that he's gone through, we got a small loan through our business center. He has now acquired a building on Park Street in Arcade and is tickled pink that he's going to be moving his business into a place like that. And it's just one of those, I mean, it's not a huge business, but he's going to be hiring his first employee. And it's just like, this is why we're here doing this stuff. You know? So it's really kind of neat. And then on the sad side of things, I have been working with one of our other manufacturers in Arcade that has been a victim of fraud. They had one of their checks stolen out of the mail system. The check was then washed and rewritten to individuals. There were a total number of 4 checks that were written. So there was a total of about $120,000 that was drained out of their account before it was found. And it doesn't look like, I met with them yesterday, and I'm not going to name names on banks, but it doesn't look like there's any chance of any recovery that's going to happen. And it's shameful, but I want to let the board know there's a lot of it going on out there, that checks are getting heisted out of the mail. And we're trying to encourage more of our businesses to go to ACH payments and things of that nature. Obviously, that'll get intercepted as well in the future, knowing these crooks the way we do. But it's just, it's very tragic. And if people are stuck on old systems like this one was, where you reconcile your checkbook once a month, a whole month goes by, and all of a sudden you discover there's 4 checks that were written, and they were all fraud. So, and there was no insurance. The only insurance they had was for employee theft. So it's just a big issue. I mean, we'll let the board know that stuff going on out there. And
I read an article here, it was in Buffalo paper, the lady Wall Street Journal, about this washing, actually washing checks.
We've done that later. I've never heard of that.
This is very recent, last few days.
anyway, there's an investigation going on, but you know, the Homeland Security is involved, and it's just catching these guys is not going to be very easy, because usually they send the mules in to go in and get the money out of the banks. But that's my report.
So is he bringing this to your attention because he needs assistance in getting recovery from that, or he has a loan with us and he doesn't know if he's
I think I came in more as a moral support than anything else, Tom. I've known this company for 25 years, and they're a family-run company.
Sure.
Now the next generation's taking over,
Right.
and they trust my confidentiality and ability to be there for them. And so
It is a federal offense.
it is.
Seems like,
If you get caught.
yeah.
They eventually do get caught if you don't
Yeah.
live here.
Right.
All these checks were cashed in Texas.
Right. From Eastern Europe. Is that it, Jim?
It is.
Thank you. Now, our next item is the staff compensation discussion. And could I ask everybody except the members to leave briefly? I mean, emphasize briefly. I'd like to talk to them privately.
Shut that off, Rowan.
Probably need a motion to go into
Oh.
executive
Yeah.
session.
Somebody make a
Wait.
motion, we go into executive session.
Is this turn back?
Second.
I make a motion to come out of the executive session.
It was motioned by Tom and seconded by Jim. So you guys are back in regular session.
And just to let everybody know where we are as far as item number 5. We've agreed to discuss this further and to hopefully include the entire board in our next IDA meeting. Is there any other business before the IDA? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we'll take a brief adjournment. I have to make a quick phone call, so we'll be back in about 5 minutes.
Jim.